expats, Kaylee here from Expats Everywhere, and today we have an interview for you from a guy named Rob, who's from the UK, but he lives in Shanghai, China. He is also the Expat Financial Guy, so he helps expats with their finances. So take a look at what he says, what it's like being an expat in Shanghai, plus see if you could use his services and financial information that you might need as an expat.
Hello and welcome to Expats Everywhere. If you could tell us your name, where you're from, and a little about yourself.
Yeah, sure. My name is Rob Huff. I'm originally from the UK. I've been in China now since 2008 for what was what I planned to be a 6-month career break, a kind of a stopover to learn some Mandarin and experience a bit of China before moving on to emigrate to Canada. My visa application for Canada was actually close to being approved at that point, but I extended my stay after meeting the girl I ended up marrying 3 years later. So, you know, it's often about the girl, and it was this time as well. I changed my career path after falling into financial services, and here I am still in China over 10 years later. I now have my own business as an independent financial and investment consultant to expats, and I work on a fee-only basis, so I don't use commission-paying funds and commission-paying financial products. And as far as I'm aware, I'm one of very few expat financial consultants in the world who operate in this way. So you can find out more about my background and how I help expats in my blog, which is called ExpatFinancialGuy.com.
Okay, we'll definitely put that in the description below so people can check that out. It doesn't sound like that you ever made it to Canada, so what other countries have you worked in?
I've worked in Switzerland, actually, twice, once before university and again immediately after graduating. And both times I worked on ski resorts in hotels for a full winter season. Okay. So for about, 3 or 4 months each time, I think. So not officially an expat, but I suppose, I was working, earning income, paying taxes. So I guess that counts.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, let's zero in on Shanghai itself. What is it like working in Shanghai and China in general?
Working in Shanghai is interesting. It's very interesting. I mean, it's a very modern, cosmopolitan city. It's in a constant state of development and construction and improvement, and it has a huge amount to offer. I mean, obviously it can get crowded. I think the unofficial number of residents is about 25 million. It's huge.
Wow.
And it's not concentrated either. It's quite a sprawling city. But thankfully the public transportation system here is probably the best in the world. And given the number of people here, things seem to function pretty smoothly, I'd say, on a sort of a day-to-day basis. Thankfully, I don't have to commute anymore. I mainly work from home. But if you want to experience crowds, hit People's Square. People's Square is an interchange station right downtown, right in the middle of the city, where I think three lines meet. It's mental at rush hour. It's like, when a football stadium empties at the end of the match,
right? It's
like that. But there's just this kind of infinite number of people just moving. It's incredible to see. worth the experience. But there's loads to do here. A lot of places to hang out. There's a lot of wealth here. You can find pretty much everything you'd find in a major city back home in your own country, and more, I would say.
Okay. Well, what kinds of jobs are available for English-speaking expats?
In China, I guess you'd say there are several types of job available for foreigners. There's different kind of expats, really. I mean, firstly, you've got what you might call the true expat post, okay, where your company's transferred you or promoted you from an existing position in your home country. So you're talking about working for a foreign company in a China-based office. And I think when you talk about expats, most people are generally referring to this kind of thing when they talk about expat posts, okay, and they're usually taken by people who are looking for a better salary, or for career advancement opportunities, or, if you're lucky, for both. But I mean, I think, since I've been here, certainly I think it's fair to say that the expat demographics have changed quite considerably in China, particularly in Shanghai. First, a lot of companies that previously manufactured things in China, because, that's what China's well known for, they've relocated to other Asian countries where the labor is maybe more is cheaper, places like Vietnam and Cambodia, for example.
Right.
And China's economic evolution sort of means that the wages for manufacturing jobs have risen quite significantly over the last decade, which of course reduces the profit margin. So companies move elsewhere to sort of regain that profit. And for the companies that remain, there are far less foreigners here on expat packages. The number of Chinese or the number of non-Chinese rather in management positions within foreign companies has reduced massively. Simply because the local workforce is so much more talented and qualified and capable than it might have been 10 or 20 years ago when the companies first came to China. And so from a financial point of view, it's far more cost effective to employ someone locally than to bring in a foreigner. Okay,
right.
So many of the expats that came initially on expat packages or good salary packages might have been shifted now to local contracts with fewer benefits, so maybe not housing covered and kids' education, that kind of thing. And they're generally here because they like it and because it's good for their CV, or maybe they've married a local Chinese and they're now settled with a family. The other thing is that expat packages were supposed to compensate for what was considered a hardship. Of being posted somewhere else less developed than your own country. But you can't really say that now about modern first tier cities like Shanghai and Beijing and Chengdu and places like that. So you've got the traditional sort of expat jobs, what I call traditional sort of expat jobs. Then you've got international teachers. So as their title suggests, they teach in international schools. I feel they kind of fall into a special group of jobs, special group of expats. They sort of a bit, I don't mean this in a negative sense, but they tend to live more of an expat bubble type of life, possibly more than other expats, simply because of the nature of international schools.
Definitely.
It's essentially, you've essentially implanted something foreign here. Yeah, because you go into an international school, you don't feel like you're in China, and the teachers tend to socialize with the international colleagues, which is totally natural, and they tend to live together on the same compounds and so on. So, I think some special efforts required to mix and integrate with locals if that's your situation. And they tend to sort of do this circuit as well. So they might spend a couple of years in one country and then move on to another country, depending on what they fancy. Sometimes within the same educational group, and sometimes not. And I think these jobs are generally sourced outside of China, unless you're transferring from one international school to another within China, and the employers are generally foreign rather than Chinese.
Right.
So you've got that group of expats, and then you've got a group of expats that are here under their own steam, really. So I think the first group would be generally younger people. So people might have just graduated and they come here to teach English and work for Chinese employers. And then you've got the entrepreneurial types, the types who just come here. They can be any age, really. They come here to set up their own businesses. And then you've got people like myself who come for one reason and stay for another.
Right.
Yeah. So, when I think they're the different types of people that would work here, the different kind of conditions. I think when it comes to China, it's not the sort of place you can just rock up and find a job easily.
Right.
Yeah. Options are quite limited unless you speak Mandarin, and not that many expats I found have a good enough command of spoken and written Mandarin to take the place of the local Chinese. Although it's starting to change, I would say. More and more people are learning Mandarin in schools and around the world. And, maybe it won't be that long before we start seeing foreigners waiting tables and doing kind of regular jobs,
Yeah. What does a typical day look like at your job since you work from home? Yeah.
So, I mean, as I say, my day job is a financial planning consultant. I work mostly from home. I'm fortunate in the fact that my job only really requires a phone and an internet connection. Which we have most of the time. So yeah, I can work from home or wherever I fancy working that day. My working hours are pretty flexible, I'd say. I work for myself, so I can dictate when and how I work. Most of my working time is spent reviewing client portfolios, collating reports, communicating with clients, whether that's email or by phone or by Skype. Analyzing markets, looking for investment opportunities, that kind of thing. And I'm fortunate that I don't need to prospect for new clients so much, or aggressively market my services through things like cold calling. Most of my clients and my business come through referrals, so I'm quite lucky in that sense.
Okay. And How much can someone expect to earn working in an expat working in Shanghai? What's like a good salary range that people should
Yeah,
expect?
yeah, it's that's that's quite hard to say because I
Mm,
think it depends on the position and the employer
okay.
and whether you're paid 100% locally or whether you receive part of your salary in another country in another currency. Wages and packages here can vary hugely. I think upper management positions can easily be six figures net in USD,
Mm,
plus housing, plus education for kids. I know that media and advertising companies, for example, pay really high salaries. International teachers, they actually get paid very well. They almost always get housing and subsistence covered, so they can often bank most of what they earn,
right.
which is a nice position to be in. If you're fresh out of uni and you're here teaching English, I guess you're going to be here for the experience more than to make mega bucks, you know. But you can generally earn enough to have a few beers at the weekend and perhaps tuck a little away.
What do you think a good minimum would be for someone to make to live there? To have a fairly normal
Decent.
lifestyle for, for Western standards.
Yeah, I mean, again, it depends on your lifestyle, of
Mm,
course. If you eat out all the time at Western style restaurants,
right.
if you buy your groceries from foreign supermarkets, if you're hanging out in bars all the time, if you shop in designer malls, Shanghai will cripple you financially. It'll bleed you dry really quickly.
Okay.
But it's quite interesting here, Josh, because while while many aspects of life are really expensive, things like housing, international education, if your companies don't cover that, cars, anything imported really, a lot of stuff is really cheap. So things like courier costs and having things delivered directly to your door, anything that involves manual labor, public transport, um, eating in local restaurants. You can live quite cheaply if you're willing to live a bit more,
Local.
locally.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you don't mix and socialize in an expat bubble all the time, you can live okay. In terms of accommodation, I mean, if you're young and single, you could be, say, you're teaching English, you're here on your own. You can rent a room in a fairly decent apartment with a couple of others and pay probably less than 6,000 renminbi, which is 800 US on rent. But as with most cities, the further down or the more downtown you are, the more expensive it is.
Sure.
If you're prepared to live a bit further out, it can be cheaper. If you're a family, a half decent 2-3 bed apartment, pretty much anywhere close to the city centre is going to set you back to 2,200, 2,300 USD a
Mm,
month, and I'd say that's probably being optimistic. It's more likely 3,000 to 4,500 USD. Renting's certainly not cheap in Shanghai,
wow.
especially if you're looking for a place that's close to Western standards and downtown. But I think with the efficiency of the transportation network here, because as I say, the metro system is awesome. Living 30 to 40 minutes from downtown's, for some people that's perfectly acceptable, and you can save a huge amount and get a lot more for your money. If you want to live downtown, if you want downtown on your doorstep and you want to be within sort of stumbling distance from the bars, then you'll pay a premium.
Okay. Well, speaking of other financial considerations, how much do you recommend people need to bring to start up first couple months in Shanghai?
I couldn't put a figure on it. It's probably more. It's probably a lot more than you think you'll need.
Okay.
Because you've got to consider. Firstly, landlords are going to take 1 or 2 months rent as a deposit. That's the normal sort of thing here, and a month or two in advance. So you'll need that as an absolute minimum, unless your company's got you covered. If you've got a job already and you're starting immediately, I guess you'll need at least a month's expenses, maybe 2, in your pocket, because it's going to be a whole month before you get your first paycheck.
Right.
If you're here on a tourist visa, with the intention of sort of scoping out work opportunities, which I know some people do, and then you actually find work, you need to consider that you're going to have to leave the country to get a work visa and then fly back in. So you've got to take that into consideration as well. Again, unless your new employer is happy to cover that cost for you. But basically, I'd never recommend coming to China with no money, with the intention of just looking for work when you arrive. while it's not impossible, unless you've got contacts or some really good luck and some really good skills, you'll find it tough. You also have to consider the visa regulations as well. They're really strict here, so you can't work unless you've got a work visa. So working on any other type of visa is prohibited, and you'll get kicked out if anyone finds out. So don't do that.
All right, good advice. What are some things that you can't find in China that you recommend people bring from their home country?
These days, you can get hold of everything here.
Okay,
everything.
Good.
I mean, particularly if you can negotiate the online wonder that's Taobao. I don't know if you've heard of that. It's it's an online shopping site. Yeah, so it's a bit like eBay.
Right.
It's a site for individual sellers, and there's not much you can't buy through that. But the only sort of caveat is that you need to be careful. There's a lot of fake stuff on there, so you have to find vendors that have good ratings.
Right.
But if you're buying things that are imported, expect to pay at a premium. Yeah. Import tariffs are really high here, so that's always reflected in the prices. So everything from cereals, coffee, cosmetics, wine, they're all more expensive here than you'd be used to paying back home.
Sure.
When our kids were babies, we imported milk powder, so baby formula, but that was more due to concerns over a safety scandal with locally made stuff, and most people still don't trust it now. But there's very little I've been unable to get here.
That's great to hear. I think that's going to be reassuring people.
Yeah. I mean, I guess to an extent my habits have changed. Say back in the UK, my staple breakfast would have been cereal. Yeah, I had that every single morning, and I rarely go a day or two without a tin of baked beans. It's quite a British thing, But I eat more of a Chinese diet now, so none of those foods really feature on my daily menu. So I've never bothered to buy them, but I'm not pretty certain. I know for a fact you can buy them, but it will cost you more than it would in Tesco back in the UK.
Right.
So the answer is you can get hold of everything here, albeit at a premium price. Don't worry about bringing anything special unless you've got particular dietary needs or I don't know, or medical issues. If you're like an insulin dependent diabetic or something, you might need to bring your own particular type of insulin or something. But I think if you've got those sort of insulin issues to consider, you sort of need to do some deeper research before you get here. But generally, you can get everything here.
Cool. Well, tell us, how safe is it in Shanghai, and do you feel safe on a personal level?
Yeah, good. That's a good question. I think if you ask, is a place safe, I guess most people take that to mean, what are your chances of getting mugged or physically attacked, right? And in Shanghai, I'd say that's relatively unlikely for a man or woman. It's generally safer here than any Western country I've visited. There aren't any no-go areas. There's no sort of bad housing projects or gang neighborhoods or sort of generally dodgy places like that in Shanghai. And I'd say a woman could walk home on their own safely at any time of night without anything bad happening. I mean, of course you do hear of instances of murder and violence and stuff, but the incident rate seems to be pretty low compared with the US or the UK. And I'm yet to experience an occasion where I've ever felt threatened here, even in a bar. Not that I don't get the opportunity to go to bars so often with kids now, but when even places where you've got alcohol and the likelihood of rowdiness happening are a lot higher, I never really felt threatened. Whereas you could probably pick any bar or pub in the UK in any town on a Friday night and you'd be sure to witness a few sort of scuffles, But safe. It's safe here in terms of violent crime, but there are sort of different kinds of safety concerns, I would say.
Okay.
Which maybe people aren't aware of. So, I mean, the first, like roads, for example, roads are more dangerous here, for drivers and pedestrians. Drivers show very little, if any, courtesy or concern for others. And you need to be aware of that, especially as a pedestrian. You also get pedestrians throwing themselves in front of cars to try and claim compensation, but that's a different story. And
so that's not just an urban legend.
No, no, it's true. It's true. It does happen. Maybe not so much in the city, but certainly in some of the smaller towns, it does happen.
Okay.
Generally, other safety concerns, I'd say generally, I mean, my feeling is, it might just be my perception, but I think out and about there's generally less concern for sort of general health and safety than I was used to back in the UK. So, if you're around places where they're doing renovations, things are being repaired, there always seems to be a sort of a lack of barriers and cones and sort of an indication that something potentially dangerous might happen around you. And it always seems more likely that you fall down a hole here than I've ever experienced in the UK. But that might be just the fact that the UK goes overboard with these kind of things when it comes to health and safety. I don't know. So there's that.
That's good.
Pollution's another safety concern.
Okay.
If you've got allergies or respiratory issues, then Shanghai's a big city with a lot of cars, and there's a lot of industry and construction going on around the city, and air pollution is still something the government are really sort of getting to grips with, but it's certainly much better than it was 10 years ago, and I think it's improving all the time. The smoggy days are less frequent and less severe year on year, and I don't think air pollution is a particularly Chinese problem either. It happens everywhere. It's just where they are in their economic evolution, but people are aware of it, and I think the government are doing their best to take it seriously as well.
Right. Well, I wanted to touch on something you were saying there with the kind of the public safety and public health aspect. How's the healthcare, and would you feel comfortable getting a procedure done?
Yeah, I mean, I think generally speaking, the healthcare system is decent here. I mean, the system itself is very different to what I was used to in the UK. So they don't have what they call in the UK a primary and a secondary care system. So in the UK, if your first port of call is your local general practice, so you go and see a small clinic, and if it's something that requires more sort of specialist attention or more investigation, you'll then get referred to a hospital.
Okay.
Whereas in China, it's just hospitals. Okay, so that's your first stop, regardless of your problem. And I remember when I first came here, actually, and I had a cold, just like a runny nose, sore throat kind of thing. And Chinese were like, "Hey, you got a cold, you better visit the hospital." And I used to think that's a bit extreme, isn't it? I've got a cold. Just give me some honey and lemon, and I'll get some sleep. I'll be fine. Don't need to visit the hospital. For me, the hospital was a place you go for a serious injury or a serious problem. But so I just didn't realize the system. I just thought it was a bit excessive. But so everyone goes to the hospital no matter what the problem is. So you can imagine the places can get quite crowded, and some hospitals specialize in certain therapeutic areas. So, you would probably choose the hospital depending on what your problem is. But I'm quite fortunate in that I haven't really needed to visit a hospital that often in 10 years. But I can say on the occasions that I have, I've only ever used local hospitals. And that actually, while the experience can be a bit intimidating for a foreigner, especially if you don't speak Chinese and you don't really know what's going on, things actually work quite smoothly. And I know of people who've had procedures done here as well, successfully. But having said that, I also know people who've been advised to have surgery here and then flew out to Hong Kong or somewhere else to get a second opinion and then to find out it's unnecessary. So I think it depends on what's wrong with you and the problem. But either way, the general level of care is probably more than adequate, I would say.
Do you think that China and Shanghai in particular is a good travel hub? Why or why not?
Yeah, I think it's a great travel hub for Southeast Asia, for sure. I mean, the two main airports are super modern. You've got regular flights that go to Korea, Japan, Vietnam, Thailand, Malaysia, Cambodia, you name it. So, most of those places you could quite feasibly visit over a long weekend too. So yeah, I think it's a good place to be stationed if you're interested in traveling around Southeast Asia. Singapore's not that far either.
That's right. That's awesome. Well, let's wrap it up, Rob. Could you tell us what are some pros and cons of living in Shanghai?
Yeah, okay, sure. I can give you 5 of each. Awesome. Firstly, it's crowded. Shanghai's massive, and if you're from a small town, it can take some getting used to. It can be hard to get away from people sometimes, at least in public. Pollution, food safety can still be a concern. That's the second one. Thirdly, for an expat, internet limitations are sometimes frustrating, but there are always ways to overcome it.
We're doing it right now.
Yeah, sure. It's going quite well, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think another disadvantage is if you're here for the long term, it can be quite hard to assimilate. Because I think from a Chinese perspective, you'll always be a Laowai, which is what they call the foreigners, no matter how good your Chinese is. So it's quite hard to integrate. It's not the same as American going to Europe. I think it's a lot easier, or vice versa. It's a lot easier to sort of assimilate and integrate. Another con, I think there's a lot of expats here that do complain and can be quite negative, and that can bring you down a little bit sometimes. But for me, if you're living in another country, if you're not happy, just go. I think if you're here, you have to accept that things are done differently to what you might be used to at home. You should just embrace the difference, accept it, roll with it. Don't complain, or you're never going to be happy. But you've always got the option of going home. So they're the sort of disadvantages. The pros, there are loads of reasons to live in Shanghai. There's no shortage of things to do. It's a really interesting place to live. Apart from the food and the pollution issue, it's safe for foreigners. The food itself is great. Eating out is cheap if you eat locally. Getting around is easy. Public transport is awesome. As you mentioned, it's a great hub for traveling to the rest of Asia. And foreigners, I think, are received really well by the Chinese, generally speaking. They're pretty warm and friendly to visitors. Whether you're here for a couple of weeks or a couple of years, there's so much to see, do, and learn, So, yeah.
Rob, that's awesome, man. Thank you so much for meeting with us. If you could tell us, if people want to know more about you and get a hold of you, maybe they're interested in your financial services, how do they reach out to you?
Yeah, sure. I mean, you can. I have a blog, which I'm quite active on. So you can contact me through there, expatfinancialguy.com. Or maybe I can leave my business website and email address down below.
Definitely.
And you can just reach out there. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Any questions about anything to do with finances as an expat, whatever country you're in. The majority of my clients aren't actually in China, so I deal with people all over the world. Yeah, just drop me a line. I'd be happy to get in touch and see if I can help.
Rob, thank you so much for sharing with Expats Everywhere and really helping to build our community. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks, Josh.
Cheers.